Well, I hope you've enjoyed our journey through the book of Hosea. Hosea 14 ends on a real high note, and what a blessing this chapter is. Certainly there's been many chapters of rebuke, but chapter 14 is one of hope. And in this chapter, God offers to Israel a chance to be saved and to be healed. What we see here is that God desired to heal their backsliding and to offer them love freely. If you notice there in verse 4, he says, I will heal their backsliding, I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from them. And then God goes on in verses 5 to 7 to describe what he hoped would be their future. He talked about they would be like the dew. He would be like the dew upon Israel. Israel would grow like a lily and cast forth strong roots like those of Lebanon. Her branches would spread, her beauty would be like an olive tree, and the people would return and revive and grow, and the smell of Israel would be like the wine of Lebanon. So it's just this beautiful picture of a garden that is flourishing, and everything is healthy. That's the way God wanted them to be as a nation. Now we know that they did not listen to this warning this time, and that God's judgment did come. But it will be a reminder to those in the future, to the nation in the future, how to come back to God. And it's certainly a picture of what God has for us. God has no pleasure in the death of the wicked, and God takes no delight in punishing sinners. Of course, if we do sin, we must be judged. But He is always wanting and welcoming us back. And so in these verses, we find how this transformation could be possible. How they could move from judgment and wrath and desolation to renewal, revival, and blessing. And the key is found in verses 1 to 3, and then verse 8. Three things. First of all, they must return to the Lord their God. We see that in verse 1. He says, O Israel, turn unto the Lord thy God, for thou hast fallen by thine iniquity. Revival and renewal are only possible through repentance and a right relationship with God. The key is God and returning to God. Sometimes when people find themselves in difficulty, they turn to religion. They return to good works. They try to turn over a new leaf. But there is going to be no real renewal and real revival without turning to the Lord our God. We have to understand that He is God, He is the Lord, and He is our only hope. Secondly, they must admit their sin. If we want to be forgiven, then we have to admit our sin. They had to say to God, take away all iniquity, in verse 2, and receive us graciously. They had to confess that they were filled with iniquity, patterns of sin, deep patterns of sin. They didn't justify, they didn't make excuses. There was just honest confession and ownership of their sin. And oftentimes when people talk about the gospel, they want to make it out like you just need to kind of take a new direction, make Jesus your Lord and leader. And there's no mention of sin. Sin is not a politically correct term, but it is a breaking of God's laws, and it is a going of our own way. We have to confess that if we want to be forgiven. And then they were to say, receive us graciously. And again, we come to God not through works, not through our own efforts, but through grace. Grace is a free gift, and our only hope of being received back is just simply through appealing to the graciousness of our God. And then it says, so we will render the calves of our lips, or I think the idea here is like the praises of our lips. So they had to return to God, they had to admit their sin, and thirdly, they had to stop trusting in anything else. They had to trust only in God. They had to come to the place where they realized that nothing else could save them. Verse 3, they said, Asher shall not save us. We will not ride upon horses. So Asher, referring to Assyria. Assyria is not going to save us. Our horses are not going to save us. Our false gods are not going to save us. Our only hope is in Thee, the Father, where the fatherless find mercy. Just like a fatherless child could only appeal to other people's mercy, so they had to see themselves in that light. No other hope, no other resource, only in God. And when they did, then they would find the forgiveness and the pardon that God offers. God's not really asking a lot from us. He's not asking us to do certain things. He's not asking us to become something. He's just simply asking us to recognize who He is, to recognize that we have fallen short, and to recognize there's nothing and no one else who can save us but Him. That's what it means to trust in Him. And so the wise and prudent person, as we see in the final verse, will understand these things and will know these things. They will realize that the ways of the Lord are right, that the just walk in them, and that transgressors shall fall therein. How wise are you? How prudent are you? The wisest thing you can do is to fear the Lord and to trust in His mercy. And if you do, you will be renewed and restored and revived. And may God do that in our lives today.